Hi there, I'm Andy ThuraI, VP with Constellation Research. I cover generally AI areas. One hot topic that I've been hearing from all the customers, all the CXOs, all the vendors off late is responsible AI. So I wanted to talk about that today. For that, I have Manish Goyal from IBM. Manish, tell us what you do.
Thanks, Andy. So Manish Goyal, I am a VP and senior partner in IBM Consulting, and my focus is on AI analytics broadly, but AI strategy and governance specifically, and I do that globally. And just like you, right, I've been having conversations with clients across the globe, especially on this, because it's such a critical topic, and it's also one of the key things that helps you get to scale, which is what clients are struggling with right now.
Right. So let me ask you a trip question there.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there one client that you showed up and they said, we don't care for responsible AI, we'll just do it?
They all have a different take on it as to what their level of maturity, et cetera, is. But a few conversations, few interviews, and they realize that they may be good at certain things, but they need to pick up on others. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. So I wrote on a few things when it comes to the bounds of responsible AI or the tenets of it. Right. It needs to be fair. It needs to be explainable. It needs to be hack-proof. You need to remove bias. It need to be transparent. You need to have data privacy issues solved.
Yeah.
It needs to be secure. I mean, there are others, but these are the ones that came to my mind. So, am I missing any of the elements in there?
No, I mean, I think broadly you've covered sort of the key areas that everyone who's either building AI models or using models or purchasing AI-based applications need to be cognizant of, right, and have a plan on how they are going to ensure that they are using those technologies, building them, using them, distributing them in a responsible fashion.
Right.
So you got the broad swath.
Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned something that caught my attention, because most times when I have a conversation, it's either one side or the other. All right. So one side's view of responsible AI is totally different than the other side's view, meaning that the consumers versus producers.
Yeah.
So is this applicable to both sides of it, or is one side is doing more than the other?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, right, I mean, at the end of the day, what are we talking about? We are talking about trust, right? So if I am a producer of AI models or AI models-based applications, I want to make sure that the product and service I'm selling is trustworthy, right? Because that's what consumers or users of my product or service are going to expect or are going to want, right? If I'm and on the other side, right, as a consumer, I want to be sure that if I'm using a system, right, or I'm using a service that uses AI, that it is being done responsibly, right? That it's no way going to use any of my social determinants or anything else to make decisions that would be contrary to, right? Right. So that's sort of how. So it's absolutely applicable, and at the root of it is trust, right? Trust in the models, trust in the system, or trust in the application.
Right.
That's right.
So that brings an interesting question. So all of those things, on both sides of it, do we trust because the vendors say so, or the producers say so, or are there technological measures that you could measure, saying that, okay, I measured using whatever this metric is, and then it's good enough?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more broad than that, right? Because this is not just a technology problem, right? You can't just say, I use this technology and it's certified, kind of thing, right? You've got to take a more system-wide approach to this, right? And the way we like to think about it is it's sort of two aspects, right? Two sides of a coin. One is organizational, and the other is technical, or technological, right? Because trustworthy AI, trust is not a technology problem, it's a socio-technology problem.
Right.
What it requires is that you have the right processes in place, the right organizational structure in place, right? You have somebody accountable who's actually responsible for saying, hey, what we are consuming, what we are producing, what we're distributing is trusted, is trustworthy, and here's why. And that you are compliant to the prevailing rules and regulations, right, in the jurisdictions that you work in.
Right.
So it's, now once you have this organizational structure, you have the processes in place, right, that govern this, technology plays a huge role in helping deploy those processes to make it more seamless, right, to give you visibility into all of the models, right? So instead of working with an Excel sheet, right, as your model registry, you're working with something more sophisticated than that, right? That you're getting real-time alerts on, you may have hundreds of models in your organization. You're getting real-time alerts saying, hey, these ones are hitting their threshold, right? Somebody needs to be looking at it, right? Or you can, even look at automatic remediations for some of those things. So that is why it's a more systematic approach that you have to take, and it's both sides, right? It's cultural, sociological, aspects of it, and the technology aspects of it.
So it's as I say, people, process, and technology, which all uses
it's a very simple framework, right? But it's actually very, very relevant here, right? I mean,
in every technology world, for the
in every technology world, absolutely, right? I mean, I just came from our AI ethics board meeting. It's our 5-year anniversary of the AI ethics board, and we've been running a board like that even before that. But officially, we have been running it. I think this week would be 5 years of it, right? And I call that out because we have had a very clear stance on this, right? In terms of the principle that we have declared, right? That AI is meant to augment humans, not replace them, right? That data and insights belong to the creator, right? And that you really need to be transparent, right? In terms of how decisions are being made with this technology. And the AI ethics board plays a great role, important role, right? And that is our organizational aspects of it, right? In terms of how across IBM, right? And it has representation from all of the functions, right?
Yeah, who are the specific stakeholders?
So the AI ethics board, right, is supervised by the Policy Advisory Council, which is our senior most IBM executives, right?
Not just from the AI's field.
No.
Across IBM.
Across, yeah. Okay. So the senior leadership, that's the Policy Advisory Council. Okay. The AI ethics board, works under their direction. Okay. The advisory board is comprised of individuals from across all functions and all business units, right? Okay. So IBM Research, our privacy office, our CDO team, all the different business units from software to consulting, right? Marketing, sales, everybody is represented, right? You really do need a cross-functional and diverse team on the board. And so they're setting out, how we're going to operate within IBM. Now, the ethics board is supported by delegates from each of the, or we call them focals, right? AI ethics focals in each of the business units, right? So I'm one of them for consulting, right? And so, our job is to make sure that within the business unit, all the work that is being done, right? So I regularly, every week, get a number of use cases where we may be considering doing some work for a client, right, which trips some of our guardrails, right? And so we will have a back and forth, we get legal involved. If we can't resolve it at my level, it goes up to the board to discuss and review, right? Okay. So again, we have all of these processes in place, right, in terms of how we operate, right? On the other side of the coin, or on the technology side, right, we have an integrated governance program, right? So data, privacy, AI, all are integrated, right? We use obviously our own tools, what's next at governance, right, to operate that. But it is continuous compliance, right? So we're not doing, reactive compliance. We're doing continuous compliance to AI regulations, etc. And so we really can be compliant within weeks of a new regulation coming in, because we're constantly looking at, right, and we have an AI baseline, which is also
the government bodies, agencies kind of thing, or your own internal regulation?
No, I'm talking about external.
Externals, okay.
Yeah.
And so you have to review all of that, and you have to have a compliance.
So we have different teams that do that, right? But that, again, the technology supports that aspect, right? So again, both are needed, right, to actually have a proper AI governance program within an enterprise.
Right. Just out of curiosity, is one group have more say in that than the other group, or they all have equal?
No, it's actually it's really wonderful, right? The debates that we have, the discussions we have, right? Very, very open and challenging, and sometimes it is saying, hey, we're not going to do that work. We are going to turn down work because it does not align with our AI principles.
Right.
So
you are part of the consulting organization.
Yes.
So I'm assuming when you get all these tenets and you get the policies and procedures in place, you go help implement your customers some of these policies, procedures, and even technology things. Is that right?
So we don't implement IBM's principles, etc. there, right? But what we do is help our clients come up with their own principles if they haven't already defined ones, right? So we can help them, guide them through that.
Or even help review what
they're doing. Or help review and say, hey, there seem to be some gaps here. Have you considered this or that, right? But it's obviously a really great starting point, right? To have declared AI principles, right? This is how we as an enterprise are going to use AI. But then we assess sort of how ready they are across all of the aspects, right? What is their maturity, right? Along how they are doing things from a cultural perspective, right? From a training perspective, from a technology perspective, right? From a compliance perspective. So from all of the angles that we've been discussing, we help them look at that and identify gaps. We a lot of times, right? We help them with actually applied training. Right? We teach them how to, build up their own capabilities to do this, because at the end of the day, that's a cultural change you have to have, right? This you don't want to be doing this because regulations say that. Yes, you could take that passive approach, but that's not what we recommend to people, right? When we want them to be proactive about this, want to do this because there's a real business value to this, right? Because if you can de-risk your AI-led transformation, you're going to have speed, right, which then drives value faster, right, which means competitive advantage. So that's how you want to be thinking about it. And so then, if that is the case, how do you have all the right pieces in place to be able to do that?
Right. So that one point you brought in, which is very important, is when the cultural values and process and all of that in place, that's all great. But again, one of the reasons why AI is a little bit difficult to gain traction, in my view, is I've talked about many of this, thought leadership talks, is the fact that all our software procedures, policies, everything is set up for deterministic software.
Yeah.
AI is the first time ever we are trying to force fit a probabilistic software into a deterministic software.
Yes. Which
brings its own problems because you're not 100% sure if the answer is right. So, but you want to de-risk, as you said, to make it right. So, which is in itself is a problem.
Right. It's a great point, right? And we see this all the time, and that is why you have to start, from actually the understanding and the education, right?
Right.
Many times, even senior leaders don't really understand what has changed, right?
Yep.
When they understand there's a step change in capability, right? That they're spending a lot of money on POCs, right? But they don't really understand what does this mean from a risk perspective, right? What is different, right? There are certain risks that are the same, right? Others are amplified, and then some that are brand new, right? And you really need to have and understand that. And IBM, we have an AI risk atlas that we have open sourced. So it's a collection of hundreds of risks that we have identified.
I haven't seen that. I need to take a look at it.
So it's available to anybody to look at, right? But you want to start there, right? And then from there, you want to understand, what do I need to do? How do I need to train my people differently? How do they need to understand when they are putting forward a use case that they want to pursue, which is going to have AI in it, right? What are the impacts of that, right? You want to do the usual stuff, saying, hey, what's the business value, what's the business case around it? But hey, who is the intended user, right? That's the primary intent, right? What are the secondary intents of that, right? What is the secondary, second order effects of that? And then you want to, specifically look at what all could go wrong here, right? What are the harms that could come in place? Now, if you do that as a process, right, that is embedded in how you work, right, then you're identifying the risks early, right? Then you can come up with ways of mitigating it, saying, okay, we're going to do it this way, do it that way. The other thing that we have done inside of IBM, right, and that we again advocate, right, is ethics by design, right? We have written up ways for developers, for data scientists, right, designers. How, as you're designing an AI-based system, what do you need to keep in mind?
Right.
So those are all the kinds of things that you have to have in place, right, which has to augment, right, don't have to replace your traditional, software development processes, but they need to augment because there are differences.
It is
and
a
then
different way.
on an ongoing basis, right? It's not a once and done, right? It never was with any AI or machine learning system. But now even more, right? You need to have the right guardrail. You need to have in operation what is actually happening, right? So that you can control for that, right? And that's where technology plays a huge role, right? To be able to alert, to automate, to give visibility across all of your models. But for that, your models need to be monitored in the first place, right? They need to be in a system for the technology to help you. And that comes back to culture, right? Are we doing the steps so that it actually shows up there? So that's how it's all connected.
It's funny, one of the latest podcasts I was talking about when people were saying that, model monitoring, drifting may not be necessary. I'm like, first of all, when you know that the model is helping you more efficient, you also should know by having a wrong model or the drifted model in there, if it decayed, it's going to hurt your business more than it can help you, right?
Absolutely.
So you talked about implementing it for customers. Are you allowed to talk about them? Is there one customer you want to talk about?
I'll give you a few examples of work that we're doing without naming clients, right? So that touch upon all the different things that I've been telling you about, right? So there's a global auto manufacturer, right? And they have a Gen AI lead, they have a traditional AI ML lead, right? And they were looking, saying, okay, I need for Gen AI, I need governance, right? That was the starting point. So there we really actually went in and did what I said earlier is about education, right? Yep. We did a bunch of education to the senior leadership.
Is it like more like a workshop kind of thing?
It's workshops, it's working sessions, right? So some of it is just talks, laying the land, right, of what you need to be aware of. But then we get them hands-on, right? And whether it's in person or through murals, right, that we set up, we actually work through exercises with them. Which makes it real, right? And the end goal is, that's for the leadership, right? But then for the actual teams under them, we work through their use cases that they want to bring through, right? We call it applied training. We walk them through all the steps, right? So the layers of effect thing, right? Or what's the primary intent of the use case? What's the secondary intent, right? What's possibly could go wrong? When we start doing that, right, on even a simple use case, you realize, I've
so
not been
it's not just the use case, but the decision making and the things that could go wrong, the risk identification.
So we walk them through the whole journey, right, to getting them to writing up a fact sheet, to writing up an assessment, to understand how you actually interpret an risk assessment, etc. So this once you do this, right, now I'm changing the ways of working, right, because I bought in, right, and all of them come out of this, and we don't play back. They play back to their peers, right? So we are,
you're helping them.
We are helping them, right? We are training them to actually embody the process, right? And they get really excited about it because they can become champions, and that's how you change culture, right? And again, going back to how important that is, so that's how you change culture. So that's an example of this, what we have been doing with them, right? And they're going to continue down that path. I'll take the example of a challenger digital bank in the UK, right? We've been doing some great work with them, virtual agents and stuff like that. And they started using large language models, generative AI, as part of that virtual agent. And so risk and compliance guys asked, well, hey, hang on, right? Is it safe, etc. And we walked them through, hey, yep, we've done all of these things. That's how we've mitigated our risks, etc. And they said, okay, good, go ahead. Hugely successful virtual agent. Other teams within the bank wanted to bring more Gen AI use cases, forward. And the compliance folks said, well, IBM and that other team showed us all these things. Where's your stuff for this, right? And through that, they identified that they had a gap. Now, again, they're a bank, right? Of course, they have governance and processes in place.
But they identified AI governance.
They found that they had gaps in it. They were doing AI in other places, but they had a gap, right? And so then that led to a very short 6-week strategy and governance engagement with them, laying out sort of the gaps, right? We did a maturity assessment, showed them sort of where some of the challenges were, and that led to operating model changes. And where they ended up was that they augmented their existing AI governance model with a new AI council, something like an AI ethics board, like I was describing, right? And they made some choices there, saying, hey, governance is going to be centralized, so the council is going to be responsible in seeing everything that's happening. But implementation and delivery and operations end to end is decentralized, right? So the individual CIOs of the business units, they are responsible for that.
Right.
So that was the model that worked for them.
Okay.
Right. So that's an example there. I'll take a third example of an insurer in Australia.
Okay.
Right. And
you're going global.
I'm good. That's my role. So
okay.
So now, insurer. So obviously they have governance. I mean, that's risk and governance. That's their mission, right?
Right.
Again, they started. Their C-suite basically saw that there's a step change in AI. We want to adopt it and use it more and more, right? Even more than what we are using. We want some of it to be our customer facing because we see value in that, right? But when they looked at what that would then entail, right, in terms of actually managing, governing risk, they found that while they had some of the processes, they didn't have any of the automation that would be required to do that, right? So with them, we looked at what they already have documented, right? They weren't starting out from scratch. They had a lot of that documented. They didn't have the tools, so we used what's next.gov, right? Open pages to capture all of that information in it, right? And implemented sort of the ML ops aspects, LLM ops aspects of it to what's next.governance. So now they have the whole end-to-end pieces, right? So what we do with clients sort of really spans the gamut of AI governance, right? Whether it's on the organizational side and helping them sort of build out and structure the operating model, right? All the way to actually helping them get the technology boost, right, of the automation, the visibility and automation.
Right. So that's the thing, right? It's not about having a policy level documents and stuff, but it's also about having your ML ops and model drifting and model monitoring, these things. This is all very necessary.
Oh yeah, it's got to be end to end because again, if you just stop there, then your execution.
There are companies that'll say that you go do it. I did my part.
The throwing over the wall culture means that your leadership is really not aligned on what it means to have proper AI governance.
That's true.
Right? That would be a clear signal saying something else needs to also happen here.
Right. So let me ask you a different question then. Yeah. So a lot of this responsible AI tenets and self-governing comes from within an organization most times. People are saying, from an executive level, we got to do things right. And then there are a lot of these forces coming in from external, from outside. Your EU regulation, even California has a separate regulation. Canada has one, India has one, Singapore, everywhere they have all of this kind of regulation. Some of them are wimpy, like India one. If you look at that, it's a very vague. I don't even know what they're trying to achieve using that. But there are some vague, and some like EU one is pretty good, and US one is kind of up there, right? So when you have these things, which takes more priority, and how do you cope up with both, and which one will you recommend to your clients?
It's not an either or decision, right? I was saying earlier, right? I mean, the most passive approach you could take is to say, I will just do what the regulations want, right? But if that is your point of view and that's how you're going to start off, you're probably in trouble because you really don't have the organizational structure and everything in place to be able to do this, right? At the end of the day, right? Why are these regulations in there in the first place, right? I think it goes back to saying, do all the parties have trust in the system, right? So it sort of lays the rules of the road for everyone. And if the rules of the road are understood by everybody, right, then you have innovation, you have competitiveness, everybody wins, right? So that's sort of how I think about the role of regulations. And any forward-looking enterprise should be looking at doing it from within, but they know that they have to operate in all these jurisdictions, so they also need to be compliant. But if they're doing it from within, then they already have the processes in place. Right. So they are looking at everything. And ideally they're contributing to, right, and providing feedback to as a EU act, right? I mean, they took a lot of feedback from industry around that, right? And again, they've taken it as a risk-based approach, which is all good. Yeah.
Okay. So I have two last questions, quick questions.
Sure.
Okay. So over the past years, with the data and AI and everything, people have started adding new C titles. And when a new technology comes up, they throw a new C title, right? CDO, CAO, CAIO. Do you think this need to be governed by a chief, whatever officer?
It really depends, right? I mean, I think what is more important than the title, and there are different titles, and right, is that there is an individual who's accountable for it, right?
It's everybody's responsible for it.
But there needs to be a single person that is responsible
True.
for it, who's
True.
at the end of the day, right, who's accountable for it. She or he, how they build out a team, how do they drive the organizational change, right? How they interact with industry, how transparent are they with the initiative that they're driving. That is really what is more important than the specific title of a chief AI officer or not.
Right.
I think it's all over the map. Some places it's the CIO who's taking it on. Some companies have the CDO taking it on. But at the end of the day, I think needs to be a C-suite level initiative, right? The CEO needs to be driving it, and then there needs to be an accountable individual, right, for driving this.
You said he or a she. I also want to add it.
Yeah.
AI could be responsible for this too in the future.
It could.
Anyway, so one last question.
Yeah.
So this is a lot of heavy stuff, especially responsible AI is very heavy stuff because there's a lot of risk involved, a lot of procedures involved. What keeps you at night?
I'm an optimistic person, right? So I want to think, and I hope that we as a society use this technology for all the positive things it can do.
Yeah.
There are going to be actors who are going to use the same technology for negative things, but the only way to combat it is actually going to be to use this technology. So in that sense, right, I want to take the positive view on how this technology works and what it can do for us.
So you sleep well at night?
I sleep very well.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's it, guys. So we, with Manish, we had a great conversation on responsible AI. Reach out to either one of us. I'm on social media under my name, Andy ThuraI. I'm both on Twitter and LinkedIn. And Manish?
Same. Yeah. Thank you so much, Andy.
Yeah.
It was a great conversation.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.